Hi all, this is Skate, and I thought today we would do a quick World of Warships Blitz crash course. Now there are many people out there who have already downloaded this, obviously by either being in the Philippines, where the game is released at the moment, or changing your app store to be able to download it, or downloading the APK file. And of course there are many of you out there who are eager and waiting to get hold of this game and have a go. So the purpose of this video will be whether you've downloaded it already or you haven't downloaded it and you're eagerly anticipating it. We'll cover all the things which are basics, which are needs to know to allow you to take to water like a duck. So we'll start by covering a few things in the port, a couple of things which will help you get your ship up to full spec quickly, and a couple of things that will help you maximize the ability of said ship. We will then have a quick look at different gameplay for different ship classes, how you should be trying to play the basics of each ship class, and then we can also have a quick discussion on the armor penetration and which ammo you should be using, AP or HE. So let's cover the basics in the port very quickly, and then we can jump in and have a look at the different gameplay for the different ship classes. Before I do though, is anyone else looking at the screen right now going, wow, that's really picturesque? That's how I know I'm getting old, because I notice things like that. So, I'm going to shut up now, and we're going to go straight into the port. Now this is your main screen. There are a couple of things you need to look at first. Consumables, supplies, and equipment. Now, how you equip your ships will depend on what class of ship it is. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail for now on how you should equip every single one, so we're just going to cover the basics. You've got two different types of consumables, and you've got a normal and a premium version of each. The repair kits repair 14 to 16% of the hit point pool of your ship, and the cooldown times are 90 seconds or 75 seconds. You've also got Warship protection, which is basically damage control, repairing the hull for floods, putting out fires, all things like that. And it protects you from receiving further fires for the next 10 seconds, or 15 seconds. And then on supplies, you can see which ones I have highlighted on the screen. However, for my destroyers, I do use the high-grade coal. And the most important thing with this and the consumables is to make sure you have a stock of them. Your ship will automatically supply, but if you don't have stock, there's nothing to resupply. So you've got to make sure you have a stock, basically. This is something that works very different in World of Tanks Blitz. You put your consumable on and that's it. It's on there and automatically resupplied. They don't have stocks like we do here, which means you can run out and it can catch you out. So make sure you do have them. On an equipment front, you have 3 equipment slots. Now you can either use your equipment to target the strengths of your ship to make them stronger, or pick things to improve the weaknesses. South Carolina, for me as an example, I have picked equipment which helps the main battery traverse speeds and fire resistance. Then once you go back to the main screen, you click the armory button and you have the ability to upgrade certain areas of your ship. You can upgrade all of these areas 3 times. Once you've hit 3 times, your ship is then classed as elite. And then you can pick one of the options under the elite to improve the ship further in that area. So if we upgrade this in this example, that's now fully upgraded. I can't make this ship elite yet until I have done this one once more. So I need to wait until I get the blueprints. However, it doesn't do this automatically and it doesn't prompt you. So you need to make sure you click the elite button, and there you will see there are 3 options for hull fortification, torpedo nets, and meritorious service. Obviously one helps with the hit points, one helps to protect you from torpedoes, and one gives you 10% boost to XP earned. Now that may be beneficial in the higher tiers, however there's no point putting that on something like a tier 3 ship. You will... tier 3? Tier 3 ship. Nobody would have noticed that unless I pointed it out, I guarantee it. Now, camo. Camo works different here. Now camo is expensive. This camo cost me 45,000 credits for 3 days. That's a lot of credits for 3 days, but the camo you can use on all your ships you have in the port and not just the one you're looking at here. Now there is another thing about this, is they have premium camos which provide a couple of extra percentage bonus to certain things, and you can't switch that to silver. So as a personal thing, I don't like that. I would like the option to change it to silver so everybody can use it. You can also see I'm just putting on the camouflage on all my ships, because if you put in 45,000 credits for 3 days into your camo, put it on everything you have available. Now the last and a very important thing is when you're in the port, look at the missions tab, which you can see flashing red on the top left hand side at the moment. Check it daily and check it regularly, because you've got daily missions which really do help to boost your progress in the game, and you have career progress missions. These will give you blueprints, credits and free XP to help you along the way. And then when you go back to the main screen, slightly to the right of that missions button is a rewards button. Check this one as well, because you can get daily login rewards for beginner rewards, and then when you click the daily login, you'll see a massive selection of free XP and equipment which you can get just by logging in daily. Now these are only little boosters, but the more you log in, you will see the higher the rewards get, and on top of that, it's something for nothing. You can log in while you're, I don't know, having breakfast just to get the reward. The rest of the stuff in the port, have a look through at your own leisure. It's not as imperative as those things, but those things I would strongly recommend you go through. Now let's have a look at the classes of ship. We're going to look at battleships first, and we are going to only look at them in brief, but it's a brief guideline, give you an indication how to at least start playing these ships, and the rest I think is something you'd pick up naturally. You'll see a lot of people already playing all the classes exactly the same. It doesn't work. I know. I personally tried it with destroyers, and I had my ass handed to me, so it just doesn't work. But this is why I think, and it's my personal opinion, but battleships are a good first class to go with. Very heavily armoured, they have massive guns, and they are very slow. Now that's quite advantageous as a new player, because it means you can't just go YOLO and straight in and dying. But there are things to consider with the battleship. For example, this is the Tier 4 American battleship, the Wyoming, and it looks the business to start with. But look how many massive guns are on this thing. This really does pack a punch. The difficulty is how slow the guns traverse to get around to get them on your target. So you have to start pre-aiming and preparing to fire them. But look how much damage it can cause. Especially when you get those Citadel shots in. Now, some of you may have noticed the Citadel shots come up and not really know what they are. It depends if you've come across to play this game from World of Warships or World of Tanks Blitz and you've never played it before. Now, basically, your Citadel shots is where you get it into the very, very internals of the ship. The Citadel is basically the toughest part of the ship, but it's also where everything very, very important is housed within the ship. Now, a general rule of thumb is the Citadel is located in the middle of the ship or usually below the funnels. And there's two ways to try and get at it. Well, the best ways to try and get at it. If you're long range like that, you fire in your AP, it'll go all the way up in the air, and then you'll have plunging fire, which pretty much brings them in a massive high arc, the shells, and then you bring it down onto the ship. It'll go through the deck of the ship, which is very lightly armoured, and will go straight into the citadels. The other one is shooting AP at the belt line on the water level. Which brings me to a recommendation for all classes. Oh yeah, I had some lag in this one. But yeah, the recommendation would be, imagine if you're looking at the side of a ship like we are there, because the ship's lagging out. Now when you're firing AP, you want to be having your aiming line in line with the water, where the water obviously meets the ship. When you're firing HE, you want to have your line in line with the top of the side of the ship. That way, when you're firing your HE, it's more than likely going to land on the deck and make lots and lots of tasty fires. When you're firing it at the side, it's not going to penetrate and it's just going to do damage on the outside. So you get minimal damage. So when you're aiming that slight bit higher with the HE, you're landing on the deck, you're setting fires more often. And when you're firing the AP, you're more than likely to get through the side of the ship then. That only really applies to medium to short range. When you're at the absolute maximum, fire your AP, because your AP is more than likely going to go through the deck and cause full damage. Now the other thing to consider is your penetration values are dictated by the caliber of your gun. And the general rule of thumb to add to that is battleships have the biggest guns. which means they have the best penetration, so it means you want to be using your AP as often as possible. If you're firing at another battleship, use your AP. If you're firing at a cruiser, use your AP. Now if you're firing at a destroyer, you might sometimes be better off firing your HE, because you can actually over-penetrate. I've asked the devs directly and they have confirmed that if your gun caliber is 12 times the thickness of the armor you are shooting, you will go straight through. Which means destroyers, again as a rule of thumb, having the lightest amount of armor are more than likely the ones that you are going to over-penetrate. Which of course means very low damage rolls, or 0 damage in some instances. So what I have been trialing is firing HE at destroyers. Obviously your secondaries are HE, and you can choose between HE and AP on your mains. So try it yourself in the high pen big guns. Try out HE and AP and see which works best for you. But as a rule of thumb, I have found that HE works best firing at destroyers with these big huge guns on the battleships, and for everything else I use the AP. Or if I'm long range, I'll still use the AP for everything because, well, with the plunging fire, you can go through the decks. Now obviously we mentioned the lack of armor on destroyers. The other thing with this battleship is it has huge amounts of armor. And I wasn't sure if this was brought across from World of Warships, but thankfully it has. You can angle your armor. Now this works best on battleships because they have the most armor. So when you're sailing towards something and something shooting at you, you can attempt to angle yourself, which is what I'm trying to do here. The angle I'm at here is not directly side on because, well, they can just penetrate me all day long then. But this is very difficult to angle because, well, they turn very, very slowly. And you can angle your cruisers as well, and you can produce bounces. And I guarantee anyone who's started playing already has noticed that they can shoot a salvo of every single one of their guns. And you'll have a couple of zeros if you're shooting at the ship at a funny angle. That's because they have bounced clean off. So obviously I would say remember to try an angle. It is very hard to do. I've personally found it hard to do because, well, it doesn't exactly turn quick enough to try and angle correctly. So you kind of got to go towards it, trying to pre-aim your guns and trying to pre-angle. It doesn't always work out, especially if there's a destroyer around. With destroyers around, especially if they are very, very close, they just get up close and personal, shoot off a couple of torpedoes in the side of you, and you just can't turn quick enough to catch them. It's really annoying. And the other thing that annoys the hell into me is the amount of times this ship, or any of the ships I've driven battleship-wise, have been set on fire. And that is because people who couldn't penetrate are firing a shed ton of HE at me, which of course is just setting the decks on fire. But this is just a rule of thumb there, but you'll see I fired HE at the front of that ship there, and I was doing about 100 a shot. That was AP. That's nearly 1,000 a shot, and we had, I think, a 2,000 Citadel shot then as well. So yeah, that is just a guideline. Play with it a little bit, trial it yourself, and you'll probably find that guideline works for you. And obviously it's something just to hit the ground running and you know exactly what to work from then. In terms of positioning, what I try to do in the battleship is get up in there. Rather than hanging back, which I can do for a little bit in this thing. If you let the cruisers go ahead, spot for you, and then you've got like a 10-kilometer range as an example on this South Carolina, which means I can fire from a very, very long range, which is enjoyable, but because I'm so well armoured, I think it's beneficial to get up into the battle. And even getting people pointing their guns at you away from the destroyers, you cause a distraction by sitting in the middle of the circle and capping, pretty much. And on top of that, if you are too far back, you're so slow. If you do leave it too long before you get right up in there, and you're firing long range constantly, it might be too late by the time you actually get in to have too much of an impact on the battle. So it's something I would definitely say you need to be up there as quick as you can, which isn't very quick, which means everyone else is still going to overtake you and still spot for you anyway. But it means that by the time you do catch up, you're going to be providing some heavy firepower assistance. And the one other tip I would recommend, which is a tip which was recommended to me, is if you've got a small fire, don't put it out straight away, especially early on in the game. Because what I have done is used my fire extinguisher 3 times and been set back on fire again, except my entire ship has been set on fire rather than one area of it, and I've burnt out quickly. As with if I saved my fire extinguisher from the start of the battle, when I was burning a little bit, I would have had plenty of health still left, and I would have had my fire extinguisher put it out when I needed it the most. So that would be the recommendation. That's a big recommendation, actually, with the amount of people who set you on fire. Okay, the destroyer. It's very quickly becoming my favourite class of ship. I first got in these things and I sucked badly, and I really do mean badly, because what I would do is go, this is fun, this is fast, let's drive in a straight line and spot everything. And you maybe get a couple of torpedoes off, your guns wouldn't do a significant amount of damage, and then you would die trying to run away. It doesn't work. Don't fire your guns unless you're detected. On the screen, you'll notice when you are detected, you've got that orange hazard logo saying detected. The rule should be, if you're driving a destroyer, if that's not on your screen, don't fire your guns. What you'll notice is in this replay, which I'm in the tier 3 Japanese destroyer, I haven't gone in a straight line all the way into the middle. I've gone all the way around the outside, and so far I haven't been spotted at all. You'll notice it hasn't gone up at all. What you'll see I'm actually doing is I'm trying to see where the planes are going, and I want to take out their carrier, and so far I've nearly got all the way around completely undetected. I'm going to let off a couple of torpedoes. I don't think they had the range to do any damage here, but it was definitely worth a try because I can't fire at anything else anyway. But I want their carrier, and this is what my logic is if I can sneak up all the way around without being spotted, which the camo on destroyers, if you're not firing, is amazing. That being said though, those side shots by there are very, very tempting and very overwhelming sometimes. But I know there's a big juicy carrier waiting over here, and they have no idea that I'm just going to be appearing from the side because I have not been spotted. What I actually do to try and pinpoint it better is I usually go, which you'll see I did earlier, I go onto the guns, use the aim to see, or use the zoom, sorry, to see exactly where the planes are coming back down, which can obviously give me the exact position pretty much of the ship, which we have now found. And I'm close enough that nobody else is able to get to me right now, so I have now fired my guns, and I've let off my torpedoes, and I've let them off in a very, very short span. And we're pretty much going to take this guy apart before there's anything he can do, because the torpedoes on destroyers are absolutely devastating. Look at that. He literally just bled his health, and there's nothing he can do. I'm so mobile in this thing, I can catch him and I can circle all the way around him, and I'm about to get my second set of torpedoes off on him, which we know is going to finish him off, based on how much damage the first set of torpedoes did to him. And that is the beauty of destroyers, is they are so sneaky and so stealthy that you can cause absolute havoc without being spotted. It's different than when you are spotted. If you're spotted and you're out in front of several battleships and several cruisers or other destroyers, and they're all looking at you at once, you are going to be torn apart ridiculously quickly. And then it's going to be game over, and you don't end up doing a lot of damage because of that. Playing these things the wrong way makes them very, very bad and very boring to play. And like I said, when I first started the game, I didn't really play it right at all. I played it very, very bad. In fact, if you've seen my first World of Warships Blitz video, you would have seen the last replay where I got torn apart immediately. Taking the time to learn how to play it completely changed my opinion of destroyers, and I can't stop playing them now. They're just so much fun. Now, sadly, every single one of my torpedoes missed. Oh no, one of them hit. The last one. But yeah, learning to play them properly really did make them ridiculously enjoyable. But I would still say they're a challenging ship to play. I mean, look, this is the first damage I've taken, and it's taken most of my health. Quite a substantial amount. So you can't afford to be hit that much in this thing at all. And that's what makes them so tough to play. The mobility is fantastic. The torpedoes on it are devastating. But it has no armor whatsoever. And that leads me nicely on to what ammo you should be firing from your destroyer. Now, obviously, your main goal is to get a full set of torpedoes into a target, so learning to fire the torpedoes is the priority. Don't always trust that white line if there's several targets in front of you, because it can lock onto the wrong one, so you'll have to make your own judgment. Now, that last game sadly was a defeat. This game featured at the moment here is in the Tier 2 Japanese tank destroyer. And it was this Yumikaze that made me really start enjoying destroyers. Because after I spent the time to learn how to play it, and then I took this out, I really enjoyed them. Now, one thing I didn't use in the last replay was terrain. This replay, we are using the terrain, hiding behind the rocks and firing off torpedoes from behind the rocks to ships which are about to come out. If you can catch a ship that's chasing you, go round a rock like this and fire off your torpedoes behind you as you keep going, and you will cause substantial amounts of damage. Or even better, if you're not spotted like this circumstance and you manage to get your torpedoes off. Now, I've just been spotted. My torpedoes are off. Hopefully they'll hit. I can't actually remember if I'm honest with you. And it looks like they are on target, but sadly that ship just died. Now, I am spotted. Now, in this circumstance when I'm spotted, I would have hid behind that rock immediately. Except that guy isn't paying any attention to me. You can see he's firing at my friendly over there, which means I can come around his side and get 4 more torpedoes off, and hopefully these ones are going to hit. And I can't help but just smile and laugh when every single one of your torpedoes hit and take people from 80% plus health down to 0. It's just cruel. But it doesn't always work out that way, because, well, you could end up just getting nailed, and I'm going to drive quite poorly right in front of this ship. But I have managed to get my torpedoes off, so hopefully it was worth annoying my teammates. And somehow and thankfully nothing has taken shots at me yet, so it means I can stick around, or I'm going to stick around, and do as much damage as I can. And 3 out of 4 of those torpedoes hit then, which means we did a substantial amount of damage again. Now, the other thing we need to mention with the destroyers is the guns. They tend to have the smallest guns, which means they tend to have the weakest penetration values. Which means destroyers end up spamming a lot of HE, which obviously is beneficial for fires, but you're not going to do a substantial amount of damage with these guns. More than anything, I think they're just an irritant, and they do help to rack up if you manage to keep them going all the time. But if you're trying to stay stealthy, you're not going to have your guns going all the time. So when you're in this sort of ship, you need to prioritize solely on your torpedoes. If you end up in a situation where you are against another destroyer like this, then I would recommend trying to fire some AP if you can, if you have it even. Because the AP will be enough to penetrate one of these ships, but it won't be enough to penetrate a battleship. And it's enough to penetrate some cruisers, but not reliably. So annoy the hell out of them with HE, and obviously increase your chances of fire as well. And just focus on using the torpedoes. And the other thing is, with the maps being smaller, you can't always avoid confrontations directly. Sometimes you have to go in like this and just get stuck in and just hope you don't get shot, or at least try and avoid getting shot at all costs. And I think the trick to that is actually learning where to aim your torpedoes properly, because if you can get your torpedoes to land on target, you are going to cause masses of damage before they even manage to get shots off on you. And then finally, at the end of a match like this, cleaning up or finding the last person. If you're in a battleship, you can't go fast enough to go chasing down a cruiser. It's just not going to work. So you have to hope you're in the same area of the map and light them up. But when you're in something small, light, and very agile, you can track it down. Or at least you have a very, very good chance to. Now, I've just spotted the last one, but there's only 24 seconds left on this timer. So if those hit, which I'm hoping they will, as he's just come out from behind the rock, we hopefully will be able to take him out. And if we can, I'll be very, very happy with that. Those torpedoes are absolutely savage when they hit. I don't think for 1 second he was expecting to be losing that much health that quickly. Which obviously makes me smile, because it means plenty of damage for me. I mean, that's a tier 2 ship. And I was quite happy to be producing 35,000 damage from that. I think the next person down in our team did 12 potentially. And obviously that produced lots of XP for us, which means we can work our way up to the next ship. So once you're confident playing World of Warships Blitz, definitely give the destroyers a go, but I don't think they're a class to jump into right from the very start. Onto the cruiser then. The cruiser is the happy medium between your battleship and your destroyer. They tend to carry medium caliber guns, and separate to that, they can have torpedoes, or some of them have got even more guns. It depends. Some of them, like I said, have got torpedoes, and the torpedoes are good, but I don't find, like, for example, this ship. This is the Tier 5 Premium American Marblehead. It fires 3 torpedoes from either side. Now, it's a nice arrangement because you can fire 3 torpedoes off, which is one thing which is done in this match. I fire 3 torpedoes off, and I turn the ship around and fire 3 off from the other side. But this may just be a low tier thing. We'll find out when we get up high tiers. But with the lower tier cruisers with torpedoes, the torpedoes aren't as quick to react, so to speak. I mean, for example, when we get the torpedoes off of this guy, you'll see when we use it on the destroyer, you line up where you want to fire, you click fire, and they go straight away. With this, as an example, you have to line up and you have to hold it there for a little bit, and then you'll see the line turn from red to green to let you know that your torpedoes are locked ready, and then you fire. Now that seems like a trivial thing, but when you're going from a destroyer which quickly fires to then one which you have to, well, if you turn too quickly, you have to wait until the red line goes green, they just feel a little bit more, well, clunky. They're damn good, but I just don't find them as good as the destroyers. But obviously that's the speciality of a destroyer. This is more, well, the cruiser's the happy medium, man. It's got good armor, but it's not as good as a battleship. It's got great mobility, but it's not as good as a destroyer. So the cruisers can do a bit of everything. If you can stay medium to semi-short range with a destroyer who's coming up close and personal to you, you should be able to cause some substantial damage to them before they get close enough to let their torpedoes off. And if they do manage to get their torpedoes off, well, you can hopefully let yours off and get them back, or at least get them before they get you. And it's the same with battleships. You've got the penetration values to penetrate a lot of battleships, but sometimes not always reliably. So then you have to switch to your HE, and your HE is quite amusing at that point then, because you set them on fire a lot, because these things have a very, very good rate of fire. So they are literally middle of the road. Now this sounds a little bit, well, what's the point? Why didn't you just play one so you can go to the extreme and play the other and you can go to the extreme on that one? Well, it is, like I said, it's Mr. Average, so to speak, but it's a happy medium. You're gaining benefits from both types of classes to be able to have good mobility mixed with good armor. On top of that, they have the best anti-aircraft defense. So when you have carriers who are sending their planes your way, there's a good chance you're going to make a mess of their planes. This is a higher tier thing, or going up the tiers, but you get skills then on your ships. You'll see that cooldown on the bottom, well, just in the middle, just off to the left. That is an anti-aircraft defense. When you click said button, you have a cooldown which lasts for 20 seconds. It provides an extra 50% damage to large caliber AA damage guns, and an extra 25% of the damage of small caliber AA guns. Now that's not something you get on other classes of ship, which means you are very well protected from things attacking you from the sky. I mean, a battleship has no hope of getting away from bombers coming in or torpedoes. This does, and it has armor. So where it, on the surface when you explain it, it's hard to explain when you just go, oh, it's just Mr. Average. It doesn't sound very exciting or fun to play. But when you think it can still outmaneuver attacks coming in on it, and it still has good armor, it's actually pretty fun to play. And this is the example I was on about at the start. I fired off my torpedoes. He is avoiding them by turning left, so I'm going to turn left. But what he doesn't realise is on the right hand side of my ship, lined up ready, is another 3 torpedoes coming out to say hello, which deal with him straight away. That's not something I would have been able to do in my destroyer. So I'm not going to say it's situational, rather it has its own different perks to what the other classes do. And where the battleship I recommended as a good first line to go up for people who are very, very new to the game, this one's also a very, very good line to go up, but it's less forgiving for when you're making mistakes. Obviously the other nice part is because you have great armament on a semi-mobile ship which is semi-armoured, you can move around the battlefield and situate yourself where you are required to back up your battleships, to provide extra cover fire for your destroyers. It goes where it's needed. And that's not something, like I said, a battleship can do, and sometimes the destroyer is too weak to be able to do that. And then finally we have the carrier. Now first and foremost, a carrier can provide something no other ship class can. Right at the very, very start of a battle, you send one squadron off this direction, and then you send one off in the complete other direction. Now the reason for that is you're covering both sides of the enemy spawn point. So you can see exactly where the ships are going on the other team straight away. And so can your friendlies. And that's ridiculously advantageous. And providing they are semi-competent, they can act accordingly, thanks to your spotting, basically. Now obviously by you spotting them, their AA guns are off, and you can in theory see them because of that. Or in the low tiers, what's even more fun is I've seen people trying to fire their guns at them, and that just No, it just won't work. All that does is that just puts them on the radar for everybody else. And the other very, very handy thing is when you're in this top-down view, you can pretty much go around the entire map very, very quickly and see exactly what's going on. And you can back up the people who need backing up the most. Or, like here, you can go and focus down their biggest, slowest, strongest ship. So you can start whittling that one down ready to help the team. Especially when it comes to battleships. Because battleships don't have the greatest of AA ratings. Obviously that title goes to cruisers. And couple that with the fact that a battleship is too slow to counter-maneuver your torpedo bombers. It makes them the easiest target for you as a carrier, which is very, very handy for the team because a battleship is probably the hardest target for the rest of the team. So you're pretty much softening up and tenderizing that big old battleship to help the team. And in doing so, you're actually making life easier for yourself because it's going to be the easiest ship out of all the classes for you to hit. Because it just can't adjust itself accordingly to get out of your way. But then here's the thing. You're not playing battleships at this point, so to speak. You're not cruising around, firing off big old guns or torpedoes at ships. You're in a semi-top-down view. And where I don't mind this, it is... I don't find it as exciting as playing the other ship classes. Because obviously I've come here to play with ships, not to do this. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It can be quite fun, but I don't think it's anywhere near as fun as actually driving the ships around and aiming your guns and firing. But that doesn't by any means mean it's not a worthy class to be in the game. Some people have absolutely no interest in the other classes and want to play World of Warships just for the aircraft carriers. It is each to their own. It's horses for courses. But it's sadly not my cup of tea. So other than the two recommendations of obviously focusing down the battleships and sending our planes right at the start of the battle to spot, I don't have a huge amount of recommendations. The third recommendation I would have would be if you are detected, check immediately what it is. Don't wait. Because if it's anything like a destroyer, which has got in close range like you saw we did earlier in the replay, it can be absolutely devastating and very quickly before you're able to do anything about it or reposition your planes to try and come and help. But you don't really get to drive your ship much in this class. And that's sadly what does it for me, and as a result it's not something which I'm probably going to spend too much time playing. I'm going to try and play up the line, or up one of their lines, just so I can get some decent footage and try and share some decent information with you guys. But it won't be the priority for me compared to the cruiser line I'm working at the moment, or the destroyer lines, or any other line which has a different class of shipping. But you never know, the more and more I play it, the more I might find it more enjoyable. I would rather be steering my own ship and firing shells and getting stuck in from there. So it's only my opinion, it's only my viewpoint. It's each to their own at the end of the day. But carriers aren't really that up my street. And wow, I've just noticed we have hit the 40-minute marker, so I think it's about time I start wrapping this up. As I mentioned, this video is only intended to be the basics. And it's intended as such just to give people something to work with, because as I mentioned already several times, these are things, or some of the things which I struggled with personally, and as a result I would like to pass on that information so you don't have to. So I hope there's been at least one or two ideas any transitioning Blitz player would have picked up from this to go into World of Warships Blitz or already playing it and gone, oh yeah, I'll give that a go, and then you can build your own base on it from there, trial a couple of things and so on and so forth. But I'm going to shut up now. This has been a damn long video. Thank you all for watching. It has been a long one. I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye bye.